Climate change is now one of the greatest environmental concern for the entire world. The reality of human induced climate change is no longer in doubt, but the concerted global action is required to address this existential crisis remains inexcusably inert. Together with climate change, biodiversity collapse is increasingly driving the emergence and spread of infectious diseases, the consequences of which are inevitably globally. Climate change is regressive in its nature, with those least responsible for destroying planetary health at greatest risk of suffering the direct and indirect health consequences. Over half a billion of the world's children live in areas vulnerable to extreme weather events. Without immediate action, the health of today's children and future generations will be compromised. It is considered that the impact of biodiversity collapse on the spread of infectious disease and the outline of the care in which this disease has been spreading is a serious concern for medical ethics. From a medical perspective, the first dimension required doctors to serve the best interest of their individual patients. The second dimension considers the public health dimension with a focus on disease control and cost effectiveness. The neglected third dimension considers our mutual obligation to the future health and well-being of children and generations to come. Given the adverse impact of our ecological footprint on current and future human health, we all have a collective moral obligation to act. And this is the time to act now. Climate change is now recognized as a global health and environmental emergency. Yet, as the planet warms and extreme weather events increase in frequency, it remains difficult to mobilize concerted efforts to mitigate its worst impact. Both children and wildlife are innocent victims of our inaction. The United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Children mandates that children should have the right to health and be raised in an environment that promotes their optimal development. Same for helpless biodiversity and wildlife resources around the world. They are severely negatively impacted by the widespread change in the environment. The effect of climate change on child health as well as environmental health incorporate direct physical effects of acute climate-related events and geographic shifts in infectious disease as well as the indirect effects of food insecurity and disrupted social order resulting from scarce resources and climate refugee displacement. Hence, it is important for us to understand that the extensive disturbance and the destruction of the fragile ecosystems have especially large impact on infectious disease that emerge as a result of human-animal interface and those related to environmental degradation or pollution. The widespread loss of biodiversity impacts the functioning and resilience of Earth's life-saving ecosystem while diminishing iconic species that have cultural significance. Thus, it is very important for all of us to realize that the world is suffering with the destruction of the habitats, the breaking down of various biomes and ecosystem, and the destruction of terrestrial, aquatic, as well as marine and freshwater ecosystem in an unprecedented, irreversible manner that is impacting birds, mammals, reptiles, fishes, as well as a host load of invertebrates. We are losing species at a rate faster than we are able to discover and describe them. This is an unprecedented, irreversible loss that is significant on the global scenario. Both North and Southern Hemisphere, both developed, underdeveloped, as well as developing countries, all are equally impacted. Maybe the economy of some of these countries are helping them to sustain for the time being, but all, unless comes to the common platform, is a significant challenge for them to survive at this crucial juncture. We are really at the crossroads and we really do not know which way to move. As our species erosion continue because of the widespread destruction of the forest habitats, the destruction of the major and minor forest resources, and as well as overexploitation of scanty forest resources on which a huge substantial section of the human populations are dependent. As our forests and ecosystems are getting plundered, so are our biodiversity is getting eroded day by day on every corner of the planet, from Arctic to Antarctic, from the Sahara to the Atacama, to the vast plains of South and Southeast Asia, to the desert and the vast open grasslands of Eurasia. All areas across all the continents and all the oceans of the world has been impacted. And what is more worrisome is that it is our inaction which is impacting not only the loss of wildlife biodiversity as well as our forest resources, but also humanity. Food insecurity is taking a devastating shape in many parts of Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Unless we take sustainable steps now, which are doable, and this is supported globally by a chain of comprehensive support by all major countries on this planet, it is a end time game for the entire planet. Unfortunately, because of the geopolitics and because of our selfish needs of the growth and expansion of various industries and agriculture across the various continents, because of the dire need of the expansion of industrial resources and industrial products for sustaining our modern society, we are exploiting our natural resources beyond their ability to regenerate and redistribute wealth. The wealth of the world is restricted only to a very small amount of our population, and the vast majority of the population around the planet are suffering or are being exposed to the tentative suffering that is coming as a result of the devastating impacts of the global climate change. Biodiversity significantly has been impacted as because our natural ecosystems are becoming destroyed, disrupted, habitat fragmentation, wildfires, as well as human interventions, both fortunately and unfortunately, is impacting our global order in such a devastating manner and in an irreversible order that we are not being able to replenish our ecosystems. Species that are being lost forever, and although millions and billions of dollars are being directed towards the preservation and conservation of sensitive ecosystems, the way they have been degraded, the way they have been damaged, unless those processes are reversed, unless those agricultural and industrial expansion is capped to a certain extent, it is not possible just by investing money to help support conservation of wild species around the world. Whether developing, underdeveloped, or whether it's a first world or a third world country, whether it's a north or south debate, whether it's the eastern or a western hemisphere debate, we are all equally impacted. Unfortunately, we do not want to accept it. Unfortunately, we do not want to accept that we are all vulnerable to the great dangers of climate change impacting our life. Our rivers are drying up. We are having unprecedented drought and flood in various parts of the world, impacting the life cycles of many bird species, migration of birds, whales, turtles, and various fish species, as well as mammals, are being impacted severely by the climate change. They are either moving north or south of their preferred evolutionary selected habitats and are being exposed to forces which are further aggravating to their losses. Unless we take meaningful and doable steps now, we are pushing the boundary of species towards extinction and subsequent destruction of our own ecosystem. It is time for action. It is time for us to step back and watch and understand that unless we put a leash on our selfish needs, we are putting the entire planet at a very vulnerable corner of complete annihilation and destruction beyond redemption. It is time for the entire world to come together on a common platform, join hands, take away all the differences, push aside geopolitics as well as continental and nationwide needs, and look at the broader picture of protecting Mother Earth for our own benefit, for our own resource protection, for protecting the biodiversity of the planet. Unless we take action now, any action down the time will be a late action or a futile action. Let's take action to protect our earth. Let's protect biodiversity. Let's protect our next generation so that we leave something for them to sustain. Shoykot Kumar Basu, Bureau Report, Kalinga Chronicle.